All right, guys, we are going to do TryIt number 2 in section 1.1. So we're going to look for the x and the y intercepts. Remember, if we cross the x-axis, so if we're looking at the coordinate plane, and we're going to cross the x-axis. I don't know what this graph looks like. It doesn't even matter what this graph looks like. So if I'm crossing the x-axis, say I'm over here, what is 0? Is the x value 0 or is the y value 0? Well, because I haven't gone up or down, remember graphing, first we go to the right, and then we go up, right, when we plot our points. So because I've gone over, that's my x value, and I haven't gone up at all, so that's my y value. So here, when I'm looking for the x-intercept, so where does it cross the x-axis? Here's my x-axis. When I'm crossing the x-axis, what part's 0? The y's 0. So I'm going to have to first come up with what happens when the y value is 0. So to find our x-intercept, then the y value is 0. Well, I don't see a y. I know you're sitting here going, there ain't no y, Ms. Ender. Remember, this g of x value is like our y. So we're going to put in a 0 right where that g of x is. 0 equals 4 minus x squared. Now we get to do what you all remember as some algebra. I could subtract 4 here if I wanted to, but that's going to be extra work, and I don't like extra work. Mathematicians are inherently lazy. So instead what I'm going to do is I am going to add x squared to both sides because I like adding better than subtracting anyways. That's going to cancel these guys out. And then I'm going to be able to make this x squared is equal to 4. Now, how do we get rid of a square? What's the opposite of squaring something? Because remember, when we solve equations, all we're doing is the opposite. So the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root. So we take the square root of both sides. That square root and that square are going to cancel each other out, and I'm going to be left with just an x. Well, what is the square root of 4? I know you're sitting there going, duh, it's 2. 2 times 2 is 4, but it's actually plus or minus 2, and that'll get you every time, especially on the ACT. So make sure that you get that plus or minus 2. So if I were going to write this in an ordered pair, I would write that this ordered pair is 2, 0, because remember, we started out where we let our y value, be 0. We started out with y equals 0. So when you're sitting there going, how'd you get a 0? That's my y value. So y here is that 0 and x is 2. I also have a negative 2, so I can write it as negative 2, 0. Okay, now I think all that the textbook wants you to do is this plus or minus 2. Now for the y-intercept, we're going to look at what happens when we cross the coordinate plane on the y-axis. Well, now what value is 0? Now when I'm crossing here, that value, that x value is 0. So this is where x equals 0. Because remember, we start at the origin and we go over first and then up. And well, my x value is not at all. So our y-intercept is when x is equal to 0. So now this is actually even easier. So my g of x is equal to 4 minus x squared. All I have to do here, y'all, is this 0, this x squared, this x just becomes a 0. And remember, don't forget, y and g of x are the same thing. So we're just going to go ahead and plug in 0 equals 4 minus jk. Sorry, guys. Let's see if I'm fancy enough to know how to erase. We don't put a 0 there. We put a y there. There we go. 4 minus 0 squared. Well, duh, that's 0 squared is 0, so we just get y is equal to 4. So again, if you wanted to be fancy, you could go one step further and write the actual ordered pair. And the ordered pair here is, remember, our x value we started out with was 0, and our y value is what we just came up with here, which is 4. So our ordered pair would be 0, 4. But I think all the textbook wants is that y equals 4. So the y-intercept would be 4, and the x-intercept would be positive and negative 2.